It's been a little while and COVID and all that crap started happening, so I took a little break, but I was trying to think of some stuff to talk about, you know, fitness related, but also some other things I've been working on. I've started doing some writing, some stuff I think is fun, and I was trying to come back with an idea for a video, and I realized what better opportunity than a hot take on the very popular and a year in the making fight between Thor Bjornnson, the Mountain, and Eddie the Beast Hall. So, I have learned since leaving that the internet prefers something called a numbered list and a breakdown of sections. So I will attempt to give that to you as I disseminate my opinion on the fight. I'll break it down into three main ones. The first one will be a little bit of an introduction and background about both Thor and Eddie, the animosity they have, and then why this fight was about to transpire. 2, the lead up to the fight, and then 3, the fight itself. I am not a boxing analyst. I'm more of a fan and an enthusiast. However, I am a very big pop cultural fan, and I think that'll be what I try to weave in, and it won't be an exact documentary or history about both of them. You can go check both of their YouTube channels out. They've spent about a year prepping and preparing all of that. I'll give just cursory levels, but what I'll try to do is weave in some themes and some metas that I think kind of stand out and make this interesting. Chiefly, some of them would be Mike Tyson and his influence on both fighters, the video game Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and how I think it kind of weaves its way in, Roy Jones Jr., and Bill Burr. So you can kind of stick around and see how I weave those all together to go through those 3 sections. Part 1, the introduction. Thor and Eddie. Who are they? What do they do? Why are they mad at each other? Why are they fighting? Let's find out. So, Thor Bjornnson, the Mountain, and Eddie the Beast Hall are both former World's Strongest Men. They're both absolutely top of their respective genre, the strongman, bodybuilding, fitness community. They're the very tippy top of that. Outside of that, people may not know them that well at all. Probably not Eddie, but Thor might be known a little better for his role in the Game of Thrones TV show, in which he basically portrays a crazy 6'9", 440-pound fucking monster that just goes around crushing guys' skulls. So that might be, if you're outside of the fitness industry, the strongman, and World's Strongest Men industry, that might be where you might know him from. Eddie you wouldn't really know as well unless you were inside it. But both of them are basically at the very top of the game. So why they're fighting most likely is something called a cash grab. Maybe. But right now it's more of a social trending phenomenon that seems to be jumping up, and all these internet celebrities, social media stars are kind of jumping in, like the Logan Pauls and whoever Logan Paul fought. I'm not even really sure. I don't even really know who Logan Paul is, but apparently for reasons that have been, explained to me that I don't still understand, he's a pretty big deal and really important and stuff to say that people care about. And apparently he got in a fight with someone and they can make a bunch of money just fighting. So he fought some other guy who I don't know, KSI or something. Anyhow, that's just going on. That's the meta of what's happening. Thor and Eddie maybe wanted to capitalize on this. However, what they have is actual beef.
If I touch him, he's going to rip my head off. But he got in my face and touched me. So, end of the day, boxing in the ring is one thing. If you're going to get in the face on the street, that's a different matter. So don't do that.
Wait a minute, didn't you come to my training
I
session?
stood on the line.
You came to my fucking training session.
They are actually really fucking angry at each other, and it might supersede money, and it might be actual respect and honor and all of those types of things, and maybe just wanting to beat the fuck out of each other is the reason this is happening, and that's the reason that this is pretty exciting.
You fucking smeared my win. Same thing. And I won't forget it for.
Why is that? That's a good question. And I didn't dig super deep, But apparently back in 2017, a handshake that may or may not have happened between the two of them at some point during the contest is debated by both sides, and the stories vary.
I'll shake your hand as a sportsman in the world of boxing.
Like I did back in 2017?
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
You shook your
You
hand.
fucking fake lying bitch.
But apparently, they both feel dishonored about something at that point, and they're angry and they hate each other. Then, to make matters even worse, apparently, worse is a way to describe it, both of them have both attempted and successfully completed, successfully with a little asterisk beside it, world-wrecking deadlift records of over 1,000 fucking pounds. So let me explain what that is to someone. That's when you literally pick 1,000 fucking pounds or 1,005 pounds off the fucking ground. Now, during the course of the history of man, the amount of humans who have been capable of doing that can be counted on less than one hand. You don't even use your thumb. And these are two of them. They are both 300 plus beasts that want to kill each other because of a bunch of different reasons, but primarily it would appear that the honor of actually who has the deadlift record.
So if I pulled 501 kilo in my home gym, would you accept it? Or, I'm asking you, would you accept it?
And neither of them have done it in a successful competition, so the answer might be neither of them, but both of them have done it on their own and filmed it, so they both say that they both have it. And neither like each other, and both want to fucking kill each other. So that's the quick synopsis. We have two of the biggest, strongest men in the entire world that really don't like each other, both want to take each other's heads off, and there's a money component to it too, which they both kind of say is not a big deal, and I kind of believe. I think they both might actually hate each other, but we'll dig into that a little bit more as we get through part 2 and part 3, the lead up and the actual fight and the result. Part 2, the lead up. So this is when it starts to get a little bit more interesting. So this fight was scheduled over a year ago. So it actually got pushed back a little bit due to health concerns and COVID complexities and a bunch of other things. But this begs the question, what did these two behemoths of men do for that year to prepare for the fight? Well, I would say, from my vantage, that Thor took it very seriously. He had a crazy transformation, lost over 100 pounds, it changed completely his look, hired a professional coach, fought other professional boxers, and come the fight day, he actually looked like a person who was a boxer. Eddie, on the other hand, looked a little bit more like a tough man, or he might have been out of the video game Pit Fighter. However, in a fight, that can still be pretty fucking devastating. What it seemed Eddie decided the year to do was employ some Floyd Mayweather-esque tactics to create a bunch of hype, and I believe I completely took the bait and fell for it. As this was happening, for over a year, Eddie focused on the finance side a lot more than on the actually learning to box side. I didn't think he'd be able to go through the fight. I didn't think he was in shape, but he is. It's insane. He looks like a much more devastating version of like Butterbean, but he does not have the leanness, and I didn't think he'd be able to go the distance or have the stamina of Thor, but he did. So he obviously was doing his homework in that department. However, what he's definitely spent a ton of time doing was building up hype and becoming the bad guy. That's what I think he did, and it worked. He fucking tricked me. I was Team Thor. I'm like, Eddie was being a dick the entire time.
Calm, look at you, calm down. Calm.
I calmed down. Did you see this?
But hey, guess what that did? A year's worth of YouTube videos, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of millions of views of him just talking trash, keep rehashing old things, escalating it, and keep raising the stakes and raising the stakes. I believe that was his strategy. But the question is, does he actually hate Thor? So there's two answers to that. One, well, three really. Yes, no, and maybe. Yes, I think is the most likely one. Both of them were really fucking mad at each other. What Eddie became very good at was, what Eddie's good at is gaslighting, I think. Maybe it's not exactly gaslighting. Gaslighting might have been specialized by a former unnamed US president. What Eddie became very good at when debating or arguing with Thor is best described by Bill Burr and his relationship with one of his girlfriends.
If they're wrong, they go rogue. They go off-road. They start thinking of shit you're sensitive about, maybe you don't get along with your dad, and in their head, they just start concocting this evil statement. Totally designed, this desperate Hail Mary attempt to make you so fucking mad, you just call him a cunt.
Eddie is exceptionally good at just needling and constantly provoking and triggering Thor over and over.
Hang on.
Guys.
I'm calm.
Hold on.
Calm. You shoot my hand, but...
Until Thor rages, explodes on him, then Eddie's like, whoa, calm down.
And I snap. I'm like, fine, you want to have the fight? Let's fucking have the fight. She's like, we will discuss this later when you calm down.
It's hilarious. It's his entire strategy. He knows it. Everyone knows it, but it seems like Thor doesn't quite get it. Maybe there's a language barrier, or maybe Thor really fucking hates Eddie, which might be even... It makes it happen, it makes it even funnier. Everyone can see that he's constantly provoking him. As soon as Thor gets angry and wants to do something, he's like, whoa, keep your cool. So, he just employed a synthetic version of Roy Jones Jr. meets Bill Burr's relationship with his girlfriend and the frustrations that ensue.
Do it then.
I will do
Don't
£1
just
million
say
to
it.
charity.
Do it. If you said you want to do it, then fucking do it.
Calm down.
Calm down.
If you lose, will you give £1 million to charity?
And the rest you can see on the video.
Okay. So we can move on from that
Sorry,
situation.
I was asked to come by the promoter. I didn't just come.
But we
I was
can-
asked to come and stir a bit of shit.
You can say what the fuck
You got in my face. I stood in one spot. You got in my face. I say that's street talk. There's a difference.
Of course I'm going to stand if you come into my training session. What do you think you're going to do? Just sit down and hold spots? I know you're a fucking fan, you watch my session.
Down.
Right.
Wait a minute, didn't you come to my training
I
session?
stood on the line.
You came to my fucking training session.
Calm, look at you. Calm down. Calm.
I calmed down. Did you see this?
So that's the theory for the yes. The counter theories for the no's and the maybes would involve Thor being involved and in on this, understanding what Eddie's doing and reacting and acting that he's super angry all the time. Now, okay, that is possible because, Thor is a fucking actor. He is in Game of Thrones, but if you've seen Game of Thrones, I think his ability to pull this off is a little too high stakes. His acting chops quite aren't at that level yet. He's great at crushing skulls and being a beast and a barbarian. He's got that part down, but the emotional connection and conveying expressions and reacting to other people is beyond his scope. And even that isn't possible in Game of Thrones. However, it is displayed for the last year with all of his arguments with Eddie. Over and over again, Thor gets so angry, and I think this language barrier is frustrated that he can't articulate his anger because he has to speak in English the whole time. And it turns out Eddie is actually pretty fucking witty and clever and conniving. Although no one thinks Eddie is as clever and witty as Eddie thinks he's as witty and clever. And no one hates that more than Thor. And that became the super interesting thing. To see this go back and forth, and look like a build-up, and you can't really tell. Like, it really looked like they hated each other, and it really looked like Eddie knew the best way to get at Thor over and over again, and he kept doing it, and it kept making Thor more and more angry, but he had trouble expressing it, so he used that, and it fueled all of that to put into training, and it made him a better person. So, spoiler, the fact that Thor won the fight is probably due to the fact that Eddie provoked him for a year long, and Thor just couldn't keep up in this battle of wits back and forth because Eddie is just too quick-witted and would interrupt him all the time, gaslight him, change it around. It was kind of comical watching them go back and forth. Like, I can just imagine Thor going home and just being like taking out his fucking frustration on like sparring partners and everything, and just thinking about how he's gonna fucking kill Eddie. And if it was Eddie's game plan, he succeeded masterfully, and he got me really hating him. Leading the day before the fight, I even posted on Instagram just a little poll like, who you got, Thor or Eddie? I'm like, can't wait to see all these people side with me and Thor. And the majority of people, something like a 66%, 70%, all said Eddie. And I was fucking flabbergasted. I'm like, how the fuck can they be betting on Eddie? He's a fucking asshole. It doesn't even look like he's training. He's just fucking going after Thor. And I started DMing people back and I was getting triggered. And I'm like, oh, god damn it. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, Eddie's plan's working. And then you just know Eddie's at home, just super happy, counting his fucking money. He's like, he figured out the system. He's doing it. And he's gonna get $1 million if he loses anyways. He's got it all figured out. So, I mean, fucking bravo to Eddie. You got me, you got everyone. And so, that leads us to the big finale, the fight. Part 3, the fight and the immediate fight aftermath. So I'm guessing due to the timing of this video, this is probably what most people care most about. And this will be the part where I even shine more of my like pop culture lens in and not give a huge detailed boxing analysis because I can't really speak that much of it, but I can give a layman's term. Little breakdown fueled by my pop culture references and also my ability to express whatever I want just because it's fucking social media and that's what it's great for. So, the first thing I felt I really noticed when I watched this fight was just how much more respect I have for actual real boxers. These two guys, while being at the very height of athleticism and the strongest people in the world, cannot match the speed and technical skills of boxers, which I'm saying and everyone will kind of agree with. These are both exceptional, extraordinary human beings. They can lift up a couple 100-kilogram fucking Atlas stones over and over and throw them up on 6 feet ledges. They can deadlift 1,000 fucking pounds off the ground. But what we learned is the ability to do that does not necessarily translate completely into boxing skills. It translates into being a huge fucking brick shithouse that can destroy things, but it turns out boxing is a little more complicated than that, and there's a trade-off between sheer strength and size and speed that goes with it. And so what you might realize is if there was an advantage to being 340 pounds, then all the best boxers in the world would be 340 pounds. But that doesn't happen. You gotta kind of be quick, and that's probably what we kind of saw happening. These guys were juggernauts that threw haymakers, but even their punches wouldn't be able to be half the power of Mike Tyson's fucking knockout power. And so while we're on the topic of Mike Tyson, let me segue into one of the aspects that I think this fight really mirrored. And that was both Eddie and Thor were basically characters and bosses out of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The video game. They were guys that had spent a year, but had really only both learned one really good strategy and skill to which employ and fight with the entire fight, and it's what the entire fight was, and they did it about 100 times in a row. And what that was, Eddie would lean back, do his low height, then come over and they just come across with an overhand cross. You just try to give a fucking huge knockout on Thor, just this huge power punch over and over again. And it sounds like it wouldn't work that well, but Thor kind of learned early in the fight, even though he doesn't have anything else, no other tricks in his bags, he only needs that one trick. And Thor got knocked down a few times early in the fight. I was flabbergasted. I'm like, oh my god. Thor looked like he was a better technical boxer, standing up like, with his guard up. Eddie looked like he was a cocky motherfucker, which he is, so it showcased his personality with his fighting style, which I appreciate. But you also have to respect the fact that when a 300-pound plus guy is coming with a haymaker, he lands one of those on the jaw, it's fucking lights out. And Thor had to watch for that the entire time. Now, being an armchair analyst, much like all of you sitting at home, you would say, this is kind of like Eddie is just bald bull, and he's just backing up and doing his little run-in and throwing his punch over and over. If he lands, you're fucking done. But you gotta counter it at the exact right time. If you fuck up, you're done. And that's what Thor realized. It seemed that Thor should be able to counter that, but apparently it takes more than 1 year of practice to counter that type of strategy. So Eddie had this very dominant strategy. You think Thor could just know what's coming, because it happened 95 times earlier. He was coming over like this, kind of duck under, Eddie's gonna be down here, and then just fucking uppercut him. Fucking game over. You think it's fucking Mike Tyson's punch out, you're like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Like, hit the duck, and then now hit select. Come on, Thor, hit select. God damn it, Thor, you hit fucking pause. Oh. But we've all done that, and you can't blame Thor, because with his fucking huge mitts that can only crush skulls, I think it's impossible for him to hit select, and he's gonna hit the start button simultaneously all the time as well. Thor, on the other hand, also had a dominant strategy, and that was to sit back and just constantly throw jabs out the entire fight, keep landing little jabs, no real power punches per se. Eddie only threw power punches, and he landed a lot more hard punches than Thor did, but Thor was gonna win by attrition. Thor was basically Mike Tyson from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which is funny, the video game character, but only the first little 10 seconds of it when he's just throwing that jab the entire time. He starts getting a little harder later in the game. That game's fucking impossible, but even those jabs, he was doing it. So Thor had mimicked Mike Tyson from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out as his spirit animal to fight. The funny thing is, what Eddie was doing was mimicking the real Mike Tyson, who also was at a significant height advantage. And so he did the same thing. He left his head down, would come up, and then would enter in and try to throw a punch. The big difference between Eddie and Mike Tyson is Mike Tyson is about 3 times as fucking fast as Eddie, and that speed kind of matters. And Mike Tyson would also land those punches, and also, if he didn't land them, he was also coming back with another one. So he had a lot more tricks up his sleeve than just one punch, but it was a little funny in my head to see Mike Tyson, the video game, the jab approach exhibited by Thor, versus the real Mike Tyson crouching to get in close, break the reach advantage, and then just throw power punches. That was the fight. It was Mike Tyson versus Mike Tyson. Now, you might say, I wonder what would happen if that really existed in real life. Guess what? I think some people might have found this little gem on the internet, and they used it to move the Vegas betting odds, because leading into the fight, Eddie was an 11-8 underdog versus Thor. And what did happen is Jimmy Fallon asked the same question as well, and he made the real Mike Tyson fight the virtual Mike Tyson on his TV show. Of which, of course, the real Mike Tyson lost to the version of Mike Tyson. So, I'm not 100% sure, but I think some of the smartest people in the room understood that meta, and they realized the real Mike Tyson, who would synthetically be Eddie, would be taking on Thor, who was the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out final boss character, and they knew the outcome there. And that's why they moved the line, and you bet on the virtual Mike Tyson and not the real Mike Tyson, for a made-up fantasy fight like this. So that's the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out video game analogy. The second analogy that I'd like to call attention to in this fight would be a game of rock, paper, scissors. That's the game that these two were playing. However, due to the fact that they only had about a year of experience, they only eventually learned during their time of training to throw rock and scissor. Neither of them ever learned how to throw paper. Both of them had one move, their rock, that was just their go-to move. Eddie's lean back and try to throw that one punch, and then Thor's sit back and jab and then try to throw a hook or something like that. Some type of power punch, but it was never even close to the power that Eddie was going for. His was more defensive and keeping the range. Eddie was laying back and keeping his head back and making sure Thor couldn't hit him with anything. That was the entire game. It was throw that rock. Every once in a while, someone would try something different, and they just didn't have the experience to make it work. They could do their one thing. It was their dominant strategy. Early in the fight, sometimes Thor would try to do something different. He'd get excited, get a little confident because he landed a few jabs, and he'd throw a scissors, and guess what? Eddie throws fucking rock, and he lands it right on fucking Thor, and he's down. Like, that was the game. Then Eddie would do the same thing. He'd get a little cocky. Sometimes he'd try to shift up his stance, and the second he does that, boom, just shots in the face. My favorite part in the fight, and I give Eddie huge fucking props for this, is he went for the glory. And I empathize and understand completely what he was doing. There was one point in the fight near the end when Eddie decided that he wanted to be the highlight reel of the decade, and he decided to slingshot himself off the ropes into a Superman punch for a fucking haymaker knockout, snap Thor's fucking head off move. And in my mind, that makes a lot of sense. Go for the glory. If you land that, you're a fucking hero. However, that was Eddie throwing scissors, and unfortunately for him, by this point in the fight, Thor had realized he's just only throwing rock for the rest of the fight. His scissors weren't working, and when Eddie went off the ropes and came in, he fucking ate it. And God, I'd like to see the alternate reality in which Eddie did land that punch. He'd look like a genius, but we don't live in that, and so you'll only have to imagine. But I'm sure everyone else, even in their head, I certainly was, put myself in the mind of Eddie and understood what he was doing. He's probably thinking, this is gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait till the highlight reel hits and he fucking comes back off and then he fucking takes it. But I mean, sometimes you gotta go for the glory. I definitely respect and understand Eddie for that move. That made my night. So, the fight ended, spoilers, in a unanimous decision all in favor of Thor. Now, this was clearly predicted by the Jimmy Fallon Tyson versus Tyson thought experiment that all of the Vegas odds makers had undoubtedly seen and moved the line accordingly. The one thing I will say that I did really like about it, and kind of leads me to the fact that maybe it was an elaborate ruse and a cunning attempt to trick all of us and garner this attention, that Eddie was creating this animosity that wasn't there between him and Thor. But I think because at the end, they both embraced, congratulated each other, and were very sportsmanlike and honorable about it. And so there's that possibility, but I don't believe it as much as the second one. And that is this. That is, both of them impressed each other with the fight. I think there are certain things that sometimes you go through with another person and you suddenly realize that a lot of the goals and the passions, and you go through an ordeal together and you come out of it together and respect each other more for it. It'd be like in high school, you get in a fight with someone and really after the fight you realize the shit you were fighting about wasn't that important, but the fact that you both held your head high and were honorable about it, and you came out together and both suffered in it, because both of them took fucking big hits. They both, neither of them came out of that unscathed. Both got knockdowns. It was a great fight. The fight superseded my expectations, and I think at the end of it, both of them were kind of like, holy fuck. I respect this other guy. I think they couldn't, that's how I felt. I did not like Eddie in the way he was treating Thor going in, but as the fight grew, and the cuts started to mount on Eddie's face and his determination came and he just kept coming back, I started to respect him more, and I think Thor did the same. And I think Eddie also, the same thing happened for Eddie's fans and Eddie himself for Thor. These were two honorable men that care about just the respect that they have and their status within the respective fitness industry and strongman industry. Both of them had something to prove, and I think this fight actually ended up doing that. They both held their honor, and it ended with an embrace and a fist pump, and they both respected each other and liked each other more for it. So that was a great way to end it, and I think that was the best possible way it could have ended. So all in all, I was just a fan of all of the lead up to this, the fight itself, and then the final conclusion. Anyways, that's my hot take on the Eddie versus Thor fight. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like it, and come back for more hot takes that'll be coming out.